Wine. It is a universally enjoyed beverage that has been produced around the world for the past 6,000 years. It reached the coast of the Atlantic in 1500 BC with the Greeks and the Phoenicians. It traveled to the Americas with the Spanish conquistadors and sailed to Africa with the Dutch settlers. For the next 4 centuries, these regions developed independently, creating their own unique wines. Gradually, they began the long trek to claim their inheritance. Over the past 20 years, the wine industries around the world have grown reputations that are beginning to rival Europe's. Now, we see these regions coming together as the modern era presents more opportunities for them to become interconnected in order to create a single world of wine. The process, however, is by no means complete, and as we journey around the world, we will examine the aspects of wine production that have begun the unification of the world of wine. Up until 20 years ago, the international wine market was limited to the large multinational companies that could afford to mass-produce their product. As such, the international opinion of various wine regions was dependent on a very few companies that could afford to sacrifice quality for quantity. Globalization gives the opportunity for smaller companies to sell on the international market. We begin with Spain, one of the oldest wine regions in the world.
I think the last 20 years is renewed interest in the traditional styles. That's an interesting and exciting part of this business, is that people are finding back to the wines that made sherry into a great drink a long time ago. So very old, very special, very dry wines that really rank among the best wines in the world. The way being very traditional is become and small scale and focused on high quality products. The market is coming our way.
Basically, we take out 1/3 out of our Solera barrels every year to bottle and to sell. So this is ready to be consumed. But the space that's left over there, we need to top that up. And we top it up with our first criadera. So basically what we do is we blend our old sherries together with our newer sherries. This way we get the characteristic taste of the older sherry, but also the strength and the youth of the newer ones. So on. So we keep blending old and new together, and that's why we always have a constant quality in our product. I think we keep over like 40% over here in Spain, because it's a very common thing to drink sherries over here and brandies. It's drunk with a lot over here. So the rest we export to all the 115 countries that you saw before.
Maybe 60% Europe and 40% the rest of the world. Canada, the United States, Mexico, Central America, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, China, which is good for us at the moment, Japan, Singapore, Russia. 10-12 years ago, we didn't really export much. Most was consumed here, locally, and in Spain in general.
South Africa is perhaps one of the most unique wine regions of the world, where they replace tradition with science.
It's a hybrid varietal, so it's made from 2 varietals. It's cross-pollinated, really, if you want to look at it like that. Pinot Noir, which is a French varietal, as well as Hermitage, Hermitage is also known as Cinsault, Cinsauld. And the gentleman that was Dr. Piro, he was in the microbiological department, but they were trying to come up with almost like a pesticide, something that the plants would withstand, the vines, to combat certain funguses and Sophocles, which the grapevines around here are very prone to, which is like a white powdery fungus. And they, just by playing around with the different vines, different cultivars, they came up with this one. They planted it to see what the reactions would be to this pesticide, and just outgrew everything. And that's how we came about our Finitage. So all by accident. So microbiology plays a very important part of making wine. Your microbiologist on most estates would, if you've had rainy season now in summer, or in the end of spring, okay, how does this affect our vine? How does it affect that type of cultivar of wine? How does it affect it in a year's time? How does it affect it in 4 years' time once it's bottled? Okay, all of that has got to do with the consistency of your wine. If you taste the wine now at Skullbutt Play, you go, Richard, this is fantastic. This is the most amazing wine I've ever had. Next year, you want to go buy the same bottle. That bottle needs to taste the same. Yes, it's from a different vintage, but it needs to taste systematically the same. Okay, it's got to be consistent. And that's what winemaking is all about. That's why the winemakers win prizes, not because of that specific year or that vintage, because of their consistency. Okay, that's what makes a good winemaker in my book. The only reason that a cork is in the bottle is to keep the liquid inside and the oxygen out. That's it. There's no other reason for it. So a screw cap, is doing its job. It's keeping the wine in the bottle, the oxygen out of the bottle. So is the synthetic cork. The only problem is the synthetic cork is quite a bugger to put back in the bottle. You can take a Shiraz plant from Argentina or from Australia, and go and plant it in the Bordeaux region in France, and then take Cabernet Sauvignon from Bordeaux and plant it in Australia. They're both going to grow, they're going to give you grapes, you can make wine, but the characteristic won't be the same because of your soil and climatic conditions being very specific to the plant. Our climate is too hot, the wood is very porous. So if you had to make a barrel from South African oak, your wine would have over flavour, it would be too much flavour. Where we use American or French oak. The American oak for very strong, hard, bold wines. French oak for softer, smoother varietals as well as the thick. You can't use English oak because it's too hard, so it gives no flavour. So ours gives too much flavour.
Versus heat.
We export 65% of our wine. The bulk is to Scandinavian countries. England is our biggest importer, as well as the Netherlands. So God bless the English drunken bastards, let them drink some more. They buy a lot of our wine. But you'll find a lot of southern hemisphere wines really in the UK. They shy away from the old world wines and they go more for the new world wines.
Argentina is a latecomer to the international stage of wine. Its tumultuous political history discouraged nearly all foreign investment, essentially isolating its wine industry from the rest of the world. New innovations in technology passed by this South American country, and it wasn't until 20 years ago that modernization arrived.
Well, the wine region is pretty unique. It's like I was saying, it's all along the Andes Mountains, and so it's really it's called a continental wine region. So they don't have problems with moisture coming off the ocean or a lot of rainfall that causes damage to the vine. So what happens is the Andes Mountains that divides Chile and Argentina. So the moisture comes off the Pacific Ocean and then it falls on the Chilean side there. So it leaves Argentina with this really dry region. So there's almost no problems with pests or diseases. They produce almost everything, but the 60% of the production is Malbec, which is a grape originally from France. Also, in the north of the country, around Salta, which is up near Bolivia, they produce a lot of Torrontés, which is a white wine. And that grape's originally from Spain. So almost all of the grapes that are in Argentina are originally from Europe, but they're brought over by immigrants or before that by missionaries. Paul Hobbs, who he's originally from California, he came down to Argentina and saw the potential with the terroir of the country because it's quite unique among the wine world. So then he partnered with the Catena Zapata, who I mentioned is the largest winery, and introduced modern winemaking technologies. So for instance, oak-aged wine, fermentation in stainless steel containers, doing yield control on the grapes. The primary markets for export are the U.S. and then a lot to Brazil. They drink a lot of Argentine wine there, and then some to Northern Europe.
A close neighbor, Uruguay, shares many characteristics of its wine industry with Argentina. Its wine industry was renovated in the 1980s and has been growing ever since. Uruguay has a very old tradition of wine, but there was a renovation of viniculture, that is, the production of fine wine, that occurred in the year 1980. We typically bring in vines from France, Spain, and other regions, then recreate the wine in Uruguay's preferential climate. Uruguay's export of wine is very small when compared to the countries around it. Compared to what Argentina and Chile export, what we send out is very small, but it is growing. And since the revival in 1980, it has gone on growing year after year. The variety that has the most success around the world is the Tannat wine, because, well, Uruguay has become the producer of Tannat. In this store, we receive many foreign travelers from distinct places, from the United States and many from Europe. And they all want to get to know the wine from other countries that aren't in Europe, like South Africa, Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay. And what they're discovering is that they enjoy these wines that they have previously been unaccustomed to. They find that these countries produce wine that is not only good, but really good. Together, we are creating a new world of wine.
Well, I think it's going to continue growing quite a bit. I was just in Mendoza, and you could see everywhere you looked new vineyards being planted. There's a lot of money to be made here in winery because in Argentina there's lots of land, labor's fairly inexpensive, and so I think it's going to continue rising.
Then the international markets have developed an interest in that type of product as well. So we've seen our sort of international presence has grown a lot.
Keeping up with technology now.
So I think it's going to continue rising.
Ordered throughout the world.
A higher appreciation
You're coming into us from.
are now all over the world.
Until 20 years ago, Europe was the undisputed leader in the world of wine, but it no longer stands alone at the forefront of wine production. Increasing globalization has allowed other wine regions around the world to build up their own competitive reputations. In their formative years, each world region gained distinctive characteristics that make them competitive in the international market. The coming decade will see these once distinct regions becoming ever more connected. We see a growing trend towards a more universal market for one of the world's greatest luxury items. The wine industries of the world are growing together, each using their own strengths to create a new, unified world of wine.